We are living through an extraordinary moment in history.
I understood very, very well that $500,000 a month is good, but $1 million a month is better.
It's a phrase that sparked debates, inspired memes, and fueled countless headlines. Nobody wants to work anymore. Whether it's an exasperated employer struggling to hire staff or a social media post lamenting the supposed laziness of today's generation, this sentiment has become a lightning rod for controversy. But this oversimplified statement does bring up a much deeper question. What's really happening in the workforce today?
I hate my job!
This isn't just a passing trend or a modern-day complaint. It's a reflection of a major shift in our economy, culture, and society. Whether it's the aftershocks of the pandemic or the rise of automation, the gig economy, and changing generational values, the reasons why people are stepping away from traditional employment or demanding more from it are as varied as they are complex. Labor force participation, a metric that tracks how many working-age people are employed or actively seeking jobs, has been in a steady decline for years. For men aged 25-54, participation rates have dropped by over 5% since the 1960s. Women's participation, after rising sharply in the late 20th century, has also stagnated. Meanwhile, industries across the board, hospitality, construction, healthcare, are struggling to fill roles. The media often reports on these gaps as a worker shortage. But is that really what's happening? Let's begin with wages, one of the most contentious issues at the heart of this conversation. While the cost of living has exploded, especially for essentials like housing, education, and healthcare, real wages have barely budged in decades. In the 1970s, a single-income household could comfortably afford a mortgage, raise children, and even save for the future. Today, the average worker often juggles multiple jobs just to scrape by. Between 1979 and 2020, worker productivity in the United States grew by 62.5%, but hourly wages only increased by 17.5%. So while employees are working harder than ever before, the fruits of their labor are increasingly going elsewhere, primarily to executives and shareholders. This growing disparity has left many workers feeling undervalued and overexploited. For younger generations, this economic imbalance feels especially acute. Millennials and Gen Z are entering a workforce that offers far less security than their parents enjoyed. Skyrocketing tuition costs mean many graduates begin their careers buried under tens of thousands of dollars in debt. Housing prices have risen so dramatically that owning a home feels like a pipe dream for millions. A survey conducted in 2023 found that 70% of Gen Z workers don't believe they'll ever afford retirement, and 64% fear they'll never own a home. But this isn't just about money. It's also about the conditions under which people are expected to work. In many industries, jobs that once offered stability have transformed into grueling, exploitative roles with little regard for workers' well-being. Healthcare workers, for example, routinely face long hours, high stress, and low pay, despite the essential nature of their work. Retail employees often endure erratic schedules, inadequate training, and abusive customers, all while earning wages that barely cover basic expenses. One particularly alarming trend is the rise of just-in-time scheduling. Companies in retail and food service often use algorithms to determine employee schedules based on fluctuating customer demand, resulting in unpredictable hours for workers. Imagine trying to pay rent, plan childcare, or balance a second job when your hours can change week to week with no notice. For many, this level of instability makes traditional employment feel unsustainable. And then there's the issue of workplace culture. Surveys consistently show that many employees feel disconnected from their jobs, citing a lack of respect, support, and opportunities for growth. Burnout has become so widespread that the World Health Organization officially recognized it as an occupational phenomenon in 2019. The pandemic only exacerbated this trend, with millions of workers reassessing their priorities after experiencing the fragility of life and health. For many workers, COVID-19 served as a wake-up call. The collective trauma of lockdowns, illness, and economic uncertainty forced people to reevaluate what truly matters. Remote work, once a rarity, became the norm for millions, proving that many jobs could be done without the grind of daily commutes or office politics. This taste of flexibility left workers unwilling to return to rigid, in-person schedules. Meanwhile, the Great Resignation, a term coined to describe the wave of workers quitting their jobs in 2021 and 2022, highlighted a broader trend. People are no longer willing to tolerate toxic environments or unlivable wages. Over 47 million Americans voluntarily left their jobs in 2021 alone, seeking better pay, improved conditions, or simply a break from the relentless pressure. But what about those who aren't working at all? Increasingly, people are opting out of the workforce altogether. For some, this is a matter of necessity. Caregivers who can't afford childcare, people with chronic illnesses who can't navigate the complexities of disability benefits, or older workers pushed into early retirement. For others, it's a choice, a decision to step away from a system that feels broken. This phenomenon is perhaps most evident among younger generations who are challenging the very notion of what work should look like. For decades, the American dream was built on a foundation of hard work and upward mobility. But what happens when the promise of that dream no longer feels attainable? Gen Z in particular has embraced a more skeptical view of traditional employment. Social media is filled with videos and posts advocating for anti-work philosophies, promoting financial independence, or encouraging alternative lifestyles that prioritize mental health and personal fulfillment over relentless productivity. In manufacturing, the rise of automated machinery has displaced millions of blue-collar jobs that once provided stable, well-paying employment. The retail and food service sectors are following suit, with self-checkout kiosks and automated food prep systems replacing human workers. And now, AI is encroaching on white-collar professions, from legal research and data analysis to creative industries like writing and design. A study by the McKinsey Global Institute predicts that by 2030, up to 800 million jobs worldwide could be automated. While this doesn't mean every displaced worker will remain unemployed, it does mean significant upheaval. Workers will need to retrain, adapt, and often accept lower wages in less stable roles, all while navigating the psychological toll of job insecurity. But automation isn't the only factor. Globalization, once heralded as a pathway to economic growth, has also played a role in reshaping labor markets. The outsourcing of jobs to countries with lower labor costs has hollowed out entire industries in wealthier nations, leaving behind communities grappling with unemployment, poverty, and despair. For many, work isn't just about earning a paycheck. It's a source of pride, purpose, and connection. When those jobs disappear, the ripple effects are profound. And then there's the rise of the gig economy. Platforms like Uber, DoorDash, and TaskRabbit promise flexibility and independence, but the reality often falls short. Gig workers are classified as independent contractors rather than employees, meaning they're not entitled to benefits like healthcare, retirement contributions, or even minimum wage protections. The result? An entire class of workers stuck in precarious, unstable jobs with little opportunity for advancement. But what about those who've left the traditional workforce entirely? People are turning to alternative paths, freelancing, starting their own businesses, or pursuing creative ventures. This entrepreneurial spirit has been fueled in part by the internet, which makes it easier than ever to monetize skills, reach global audiences, and carve out niche markets. While this shift offers unprecedented opportunities for some, it also underscores a larger trend. People are seeking autonomy and purpose in ways that traditional employment often fails to provide. For generations, the idea of work was deeply tied to identity. The question, "What do you do?" wasn't just about how you earned a living. It was about who you were. But younger generations are challenging that narrative. They're prioritizing mental health, work-life balance, and personal fulfillment over climbing corporate ladders or chasing titles. The pandemic accelerated this mindset. For millions, it was a moment of reckoning, a chance to step back and reevaluate their priorities. Remote work offered a glimpse of what life could look like without long commutes, rigid schedules, or constant burnout. For many, there was no going back. Governments and corporations are starting to respond, although slowly. Countries like Finland and Iceland have experimented with shorter work weeks, finding that reduced hours can boost productivity and improve well-being. Some companies are embracing remote work or hybrid models, recognizing that flexibility is no longer a perk but an expectation. Others are raising wages or offering enhanced benefits to attract and retain talent. But systemic change requires more than isolated efforts. It requires a fundamental rethinking of how we value work and the people who perform it. What if we stopped measuring success solely in terms of GDP growth or shareholder profits and started focusing on metrics like worker satisfaction, community well-being, and environmental sustainability? So is it true that nobody wants to work anymore? Not exactly. People aren't rejecting work itself. They're rejecting unfair, exploitative, and unsustainable systems. When faced with low wages, poor conditions, and a lack of respect, workers are making rational choices. to quit, to seek alternatives, or to demand better? What if we treated workers not as expendable resources, but as partners in a shared endeavor? Of course, this isn't a simple problem with a simple solution. It's a complex issue that requires action at every level, individual, corporate, and governmental. But as daunting as it may seem, the stakes couldn't be higher. Because here's the truth, work isn't disappearing, it's evolving. And the choices we make now will shape what that evolution looks like.